Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Ferris, and I'm a professor in the Sol Price School of Public Policy, and I also have the privilege of directing the Center on Philanthropy and Public Policy. On behalf of the Board of Advisors of the Center on Philanthropy and Public Policy and the Sol Price Center for Social Innovation, I'm delighted to welcome you here for this important, interesting, and if we've been successful, thought-provoking forum prioritizing place. This forum punctuates a year-long inquiry that we have undertaken to understand better the state of place-based initiatives. It has been a project of the two centers. The Center on Philanthropy and Public Policy is focused on philanthropic strategies for innovative public problem solving. And the Price Center for Social Innovation is concerned with the development of ideas and practices to enhance the quality of life in low-income communities. So place-based initiatives is really at the intersection of the two centers. And it also is at the heart of Sol Price's and the Price Charity's philanthropic efforts in their hometown of San Diego, the revitalization of City Heights, of the City Heights neighborhood. The inquiry has unfolded over the course of an entire year rather than just having one-off conversations. We knew that that would be required for so complex and layered a subject. And it is one that the two centers are well positioned to lead. And in the process, we've engaged the leading thinkers and doers in the field nationwide. So why now? Although place-based initiatives have been a strategy used by foundations and government for decades, there is a renewed surge in interest and a corresponding increase in the flow of resources to these efforts. They address an array of public problems by more foundations, by government agencies, and yes, even corporations than ever before. And I think this is evidenced by a number of other efforts looking at place-based initiatives, whether it be Grantmakers for Effective Organizations' recent efforts to look at how to evaluate these initiatives, or the work of the Aspen Institute's Forum on Community Solutions. Furthermore, a new generation of thought leadership is emerging as experienced practitioners and policymakers distill the insights from decades of learning, and new leaders simultaneously introduce their own fresh perspectives. And in our mind, as we developed the inquiry and this forum, foremost was the work of those that are making decisions about how to do these, whether to do them, or maybe whether to stop doing them. The inquiry has been an opportunity to step back and take a thoughtful look at the experience of place-based initiatives, regardless of what sector is pursuing them. I want to acknowledge the leadership of my partner, Elwood Hopkins of Emerging Markets. Many of you might know Elwood if you're local or even national. He was the executive director of LA Urban Funders for many years, and that has sort of led to his current work in working in inner city neighborhoods. We hope that this effort helps to elevate the dialogue above best practices or discussions about what works to embrace the larger significance and longevity of place-based as a strategy for the field. To do that, we have been intentional about including a range of expert voices in this inquiry by design. Let me just sort of briefly tell you the design. First, we started with pulling together a national advisory committee of leaders from philanthropy, government, and corporations with deep knowledge of place-based initiatives. They helped us frame the intellectual agenda for the inquiry, shape the process, and identify the participants we have engaged. We then convened 5 discussion groups addressing a key aspect, each addressing a key aspect of place-based initiatives. They were held in Los Angeles, New York, and Washington, D.C. in April to June of this year. Each 4-hour conversation included between 8 and 12 leaders and was fully documented, including graphical recordings. We asked about the goals of these efforts, the theories and assumptions behind them, the role of the market, what it takes in terms of on-the-ground capacity, and the role of public and private funding. Based on those conversations, we have drafted the monograph, which you've all received, called Place-Based Initiatives in the Context of Public Policy and the Market, Moving to Higher Ground, which synthesizes these discussions and includes reactions and comments from a number of the participants. And all of that has led to today, this forum prioritizing place. We think this inquiry has been grounded in pragmatism and humility, accumulated through trial and error and hard-learned lessons. At the same time, it is imprinted with an unmistakable sense of optimism and energy that derives from the increased sophistication and maturity of the field. In fact, there is a deeply resonating shared sentiment that we discovered in the inquiry that it is time to think bigger rather than smaller when it comes to addressing enduring challenges of concentrated poverty in all its dimensions. And we hope that this national forum will be useful to decision makers across the sectors as they move forward. Indeed, we have tried to make this forum spark a national dialogue, and you'll hear more about that later on today. Before we get to the heart of the matter, I want to take a moment to thank a lot of people, because it takes a lot to do this. First, I want to recognize and thank the support of our Dean, Jack Knott, who fully understands the importance of philanthropy and social innovation to solving the most challenging problems we confront as a society, and their centrality to the study of public policy. Jack, why don't you stand up and... Thank you. I also want to thank the people, the individuals, the experts who have served on the National Advisory Board, as well as those who have participated in the discussion groups I just described. They represent a cross-section of the foremost thought leaders and experts in the field. Many of them have spent their whole careers working on developing, designing, and doing place-based initiatives. They have freely shared their lifetimes of experience and insight, and they did so with great generosity, candor, and intellect. We are indebted to them, so thank them. I want to thank Nick Williams, who's the Associate Director of the Center on Philanthropy, and Mehmet Barker from Emerging Markets, who have organized and managed this process with their typical grace and aplomb. So thank them. And finally, I want to thank and recognize our sponsors for today's forum. Of course, we appreciate their help in underwriting this conference, but just as importantly, they have all been involved in the inquiry themselves. We want to thank them for their intellectual contribution, their commitment to working to realize the promise of place-based work, and their sustained belief that we can do better. I want to thank Zab Briggs and the Ford Foundation, Ralph Smith and his colleagues at the Annie Casey Foundation, Delilah Wilson Scott and Carrie Decker and Antonio Manning from JP Morgan Chase, Bob Ross from the California Endowment, and Danielle Campos and Carrie Sullivan from Bank of America. So thank you to our sponsors.